All right. Thank you for coming in on the podcast, Red Forest. And all about productivity. I really get inspired seeing what you do. You get so many things done. In you plan well, and then you execute them, and then you plan next thing. You're always doing some adventurous things. So. Uh, it's even hard for me to get out of my bed and go for a hike in once a month. So I'd love to know more about your productive, how you think of those productive, I mean, make yourself so productive
Mm,
in small chunk of time, and all the tools you use, especially Notion. So thank you.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So what's your plan next? Let's start with that. Upcoming
my
adventure.
my upcoming adventures. There's the small upcoming adventures, and then there's the larger upcoming adventures. But
Mhm.
at the macro scale, I spent a couple years in Kenya and was really inspired by some of the work and people that I encountered there, and things I did there. And so, having returned to Arizona, which is where I'm from, and having some projects in Arizona that seem like they're going to continue to present themselves, I've got this idea of a kind of duality of a life, at least for the time being, of where I can kind of split time between Arizona and Kenya. And there are certain kind of strategies that I have in place to make that possible. And so one of the next big phases for me is I have two kind of larger projects in Arizona that I'm trying to wrap up over the course of the next month. And then I plan to go to Kenya on July 4th for exactly 90 days, which is how long I can get the visa, which is still pending, but it'll all come to pass, I'm sure. And I am going to build 6 kind of glamping style accommodation units in Kenya with a friend of mine in kind of a business partnership, and hopefully have that as a little bit of a footing investment income source coming out of Kenya, but also a footprint in Kenya, because I want to have energy there. I want to have part of me there. And I figure if I put money, time, energy there, then that's going to kind of magnetically pull me there. And so I also love being there. I mean, it's beautiful. It's the coast. It's deathly hot in Arizona during that period of time. And so I'm going to go and spend those 3 months with the intent to return to Arizona after that, with the intent to then some point in the like within a year be back in Kenya. So kind of this duality back and forth, but this oscillation between Arizona and Kenya, and then the subtext climbing adventures along the side, um, is the other stuff I want to do.
That's so awesome. So, as I understand, it's what they are in the winter season now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing to note about Kenya is it's right where I am on the coast, or where I kind of plan to be. It's pretty near the equator, and so your seasonal swing is not like we know seasons in the U.S. or in different parts of the country. You're looking at kind of a dry season and a rainy season, but other than that, in terms of hot, cold, snow, none of that. It's pretty much just dry
Mhm.
or the rains. And other than that, it's kind of coastal paradise with, white sandy beaches and palm trees. So
Wow,
a pretty nice exchange from the Arizona heat of the pure summer.
that's amazing. Very well planning. That's so awesome. And I've been to South Africa, and I was in Kruger National Park. We
Mm,
drove from Cape Town through all the villages, and we stayed there. That's my only memory
okay.
of African part of the world.
Yeah.
And have you been? Is that similar to the lifestyle, or is it different when you say you're
So
Kenya to?
lifestyle is an interesting question, right? I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there, but I guess I can speak to that, insofar as I have been to South Africa a few times actually. One of which probably sheds the most light on that question of lifestyles, that I actually drove from Kenya to South Africa, overland in a friend of mine's like 1994 Land Cruiser, kind of a fun adventure. And then I hitchhiked all the way back up the coast of Africa to Kenya, or southern Africa in that case. And so from a lifestyle standpoint or an infrastructure standpoint or what stores are on the side of the road, that drive from, I guess, not totally north would be, all the way up to Egypt, but from kind of East Africa down south, things start changing quite a bit. When you start getting to Botswana, you start seeing a lot more influence of South Africa, which in many terms is a much more kind of developed or industrialized economy. And that kind of spreads from south to north. And then in terms of like large economies in Africa, Kenya is kind of the other big hub in a way, Nairobi. Although still a lot of dynamic development happening and a lot of foreign investment, particularly from the Chinese. And then, so different, the culture is different, the food's different. But I mean, you go into Cape Town and it feels like you're in like a European city, but there's a reason for that. It's kind of a colonial legacy. I mean, it's the Dutch, it's the Afrikaners, it's a whole history to unpack there. And there's a reason why it looks like that. And you go about 30 kilometers outside of this city and there's a bunch of settlements, and the settlements are predominantly colored, while a lot of white South Africans are in Cape Town. It's a reality, and something that you're kind of forced to contend with and think about while you're there.
Yeah. Have you, I mean, of course you would have traveled within South Africa, right? There's a jail, I think, Nelson Mandela's stayed, and that's, what was it called? I forgot the name of that island. There's an island from Cape Town. You go there and then that's where the jail is.
Yep.
Or was, and then you come back.
Yeah, when I was there, I wasn't able to take that trip. I think like the ferry tickets were sold out or something. But yeah, the island is just off the coast of Cape Town. I mean, one of the coolest, most beautiful cities in the world, in my opinion, for sure. Table Mountain. I was super lucky to be able to hike up to the top of Table Mountain and do like an overnight in a cabin up there.
Wow. That is so cool. Were you always like this adventurous, Forrest?
I mean, I think I was very fortunate as a kid to travel a fair amount. Like, I mean, I credit a lot of that to my family and my parents. And growing up, we were able to get out and about a little bit in the Southwest, in the US, and then a couple international trips when I was a kid. One to Costa Rica that I remember with my father, and then one to China, also with my father. And then in college is where my interest was sparked even further. I made like a very intentional decision in college to kind of approach it as this kind of conduit for learning outside of the classroom. And because I was at a pretty internationally focused college, and it was a private institution, which means, you're paying top dollar or hopefully getting scholarships or whatever it is, they have a lot of resources that you can tap into that focus on that. So I ended up taking 4 international trips sponsored by the college during my 4 years in school. And so one of those was to Paris, one was to Germany, one was to Rwanda, and one was to Canada. And so, I credit the trip to Rwanda in particular is the trip that actually sparked my interest in East Africa. And that's what made me want to go to Kenya after I graduated college.
Yeah. Wow. Well, why Kenya though? Is it because you have a friend, or is it? Yeah. Okay. And
well, so my original time in Kenya was actually sparked by the fact that I got hired as kind of a private consultant just for like a short-term project by one of my former professors in college. And she has long-time ties to Kenya through public health work, particularly around like tuberculosis work, TB. So she's a public health practitioner, and she was working on a project in Kenya. And she actually sent me to Kenya for a month right when I was graduating college. And I was at the time of trying to figure out, well, what the heck do I do now with my life? And had the kind of consultancy job offers in the US that were like, money and the more stereotypical track that a lot of my peers were taking, and just didn't quite feel inspired or interested in that. And so I kind of call it the power of constraint, right? I knew I wanted to potentially work abroad and happened to be in Kenya. So I constrained my search just to Kenya and came across something in Kenya that was of interest, and applied for a fellowship, making, no money whatsoever, but that wasn't the objective. It didn't really matter at the time, and ended up on the coast of Kenya, and the rest is history, I guess.
Nice. And you mentioned about glamping style
Mm.
homes, right? What's that mean?
So, I mean, it in a way, it's just like super primitive living. And that's something that I'm interested in, from more of like kind of a values and self practice perspective. I live in like 100 square feet little space. But the glamping units that we're going to build are going to be bare, simple little like square rectangles. One of the nice things about being on the equator, which I mentioned, is you don't really have to worry about insulation. Like, things can be kind of open air. You just have to have a mosquito net to hang over your bed. And so you can just put up a little structure, as long as it's watertight on the top. You just put like a mabati is the term in Kenya, but like a corrugated metal roof, and, enclose it so you have privacy, run a little bit of power there. And you're talking about a super simple, bare bones space to stay. But there's kind of a Kalifi, the town that I intend to spend some time in and have connections to, is definitely, there's a lot of activity. It's kind of a burgeoning market. There's people that have interest there, and there's kind of an accommodation shortage for sure. And so a friend of mine who is a Kenyan guy and is pretty involved in the kind of Kalifi ecosystem and developments, wants to put these glamping units up on his land, and he needs a master builder, is what he calls it, which I don't know if I can quite use the word master, but I'm moving in that direction, as one of my core interests is kind of construction and building projects.
That's amazing. And you're like always building. You mentioned about consulting work. So
Yeah.
what type of consulting work are
Mm.
you involved in?
Yeah. So this is that work that I was doing in Kenya was, that's a very, I wonder if I could constrain what that was. That was kind of rapid prototyping for a project. So we were trying to implement what we called a community ambulance, was kind of an off-road ruggedized medical transportation cart in a slum in Nairobi. And so that was kind of the whole spectrum: project management. It was actually working directly with a welder on the design and manufacturing or prototyping of this medical cart, kind of looking at some of the financial aspects of production down the road. So I guess my degree's in economics, and that kind of has exposed me to a little bit of computer work. And then my work in Kenya, when I was not consulting, but working for this forestry company, I did a little bit of kind of, database management, offline data collection, kind of analyzing some spreadsheets that had, KPIs, key performance indicators that we had to come in. But that was like 8 hours a day look at a computer, which I came to realize fairly quickly was not what I wanted to be doing with my time. And so as I have it structured today, I spend the bulk of my time in pure construction on my own terms, though. So not working for a construction firm or anything like that, just kind of working for people that have more like large scale house remodels. And then we'll do the full spectrum, from electrical to plumbing to exterior housing to insulation to everything, and have kind of just picked it up along the way. So that's the kind of hands-on physical work. And then the consulting is more in the realm of specifically project management and a little bit of IT support. And so we collaborate with AZIPL, for instance, and that's kind of, they just adopted the Salsa CRM kind of database management system. So I was kind of a lead on the onboarding process for bringing Salsa to the organization. And then subsequently, how do we actually use this new piece of software to benefit the organization? And so that's definitely a kind of learn as you go process, but a little bit of core familiarity with a little bit of data and a little bit of website stuff is kind of how that ended up playing out. And so yeah, mostly just kind of self-taught in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's as a balance, though, a balance to have a little bit of the IT work, a little bit of the project management work that makes up about 25% of my work, and then I'd say 75% of my work is more pure construction.
Construction based. So
Yeah.
that um, makes me ask you about how you manage your time, like, because you're thinking in terms of construction work, which is
Yeah.
very physical, versus you're also thinking about IT, which is all in terms of computers. So you need to
Yeah.
compartmentalize your thinking and also stay fit, and manage time. And I mean, there's so many variables here that you need
Yeah.
to juggle with. So how do you stay motivated, productive, and manage your time?
Mm. So I'll definitely pivot into answering this by bringing up Notion, because I know that's something we wanted to talk about, and kind of has a good way for it to work as like a second brain in a way,
Mm-hmm,
right? When
mm-hmm.
you're trying to manage multiple clients or projects, or kind of workflows, I definitely need that kind of second brain download where I can put all that information in and refer back to it. But before I jump into that more kind of the specifics of it, I will get a little bit of it's kind of a playful philosophy, but it's a very important one for me because it's about motivation and it's about prioritization. And those two pieces are absolutely pivotal, I think, for what I'm working on right now, or just the way I'm choosing to structure my life. Is that I had this kind of, I have a mentor in Arizona who's kind of let's call him a life mentor. And through one of our conversations, I kind of had this idea of retiring young, like that I am going to enter retirement right now. And does that actually mean I'm not working? No, I'm putting in a lot of work these days. But the idea was more of where I'm prioritizing my time and energy. And that was to say, right now, I am utterly enthralled with rock climbing. That's probably the thing I want to do with the vast majority of my time. It's probably what I enjoy doing the most. And those two realizations right there, what do I enjoy doing the most? Or that single realization, rock climbing. Why am I not spending all of my time rock climbing? To me, it's as simple as that, right? And so I try to structure my work, which provides me income, et cetera, structure in a way that I have the time and the energy to rock climb. So it's quite simple in that way to me. It's like a prioritization of being able to do the things that I want to do. And so yeah, I could get, gainfully employed at some firm and work 60 hours a week, but would I be able to, on the drop of a hat on a Tuesday morning, go climb with a friend that happens to have that morning off? No. So it's not worth it to me. Could I go to Kenya for 3 months and build a house? No, I wouldn't be able to. And so it's that prioritization for me has really helped structure the lifestyle around the things that I want to do the most.
Wow, I love that. So you put your love for rock climbing, that's the core of your
Yeah.
of your lifestyle, and then you're circling around all the
And
other
then
things.
no.
So beautiful, very, very beautiful.
And I don't know if I'm always living that in its purest form. I have to admit to that, because it's only been in the last year and a half that that's become like kind of this central tenant focus, but it's brought so much joy and so much resurgence in terms of like my physical training, which was a big part of my youth in terms of more organized sports. And it kind of, I don't know, my mom shared a quote with me a year or so back that was, ask not what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive. What the world needs is for you to come alive. So I asked
Mhm.
myself, what makes me come alive? That's what the world needs. And so that's where I should be spending my time and energy. And right now that seems to be in the outdoors, climbing and exploring and enjoying life. And so I said, why don't I put that at the center and then make everything else work around it?
Yeah.
And so, but then you to get to your question of the specifics of how do you do that? Well, Notion is one of the ways that I do that, among others, and it's a second brain for me. So I have essentially attempted to put in systems, and this is somewhere I could vastly improve. I kind of do it at the bare, not the bare minimum. I do it insofar as it works. I sometimes struggle to take the next step, so I go 80% of the way of doing something super efficiently, and now it works for me. Well, now I can move on because it's working. And so I can kind of just, am I operating at 100% efficiency? Maybe not. I mean, with Notion, I'm probably even less than that. But the way I use that is a kind of a glorified note-taking system, in a way, a note-taking and checklist system to say, who are all of my clients right now? If I need to track hours for that client, if I need to track notes on a call that we recently had, if I need to track resources that I've done in terms of research and put in some hyperlinks relevant to specific projects, I will just create a new page in Notion and title it, AZIPL, for example, a project that we collaborate on. Within that project folder, I might have, Soumya and Forrest weekly meeting, notes on that. I might have Doug and Forrest weekly meeting, notes in that. I'll track my hours for my work and then compensation and invoices, etc. I'll track other miscellaneous research, right, for salsa specifically, a new product that AZIPL is working on where I need to do some independent learning. I can say, okay, I just learned how to use salsa and a targeted action, can write that down in its own little folder structure. And I could screen share and pull it up in a second here. But one of the nice things about Notion is, on any computer that has Word, you can create a series of folders and subfolders that have, a folder that has a project. Within that folder has a bunch of documents that are at specific processes, but that's kind of a cumbersome process to navigate between the different areas. Notion is just really visual and built on blocks. And so you can just really quickly add a new block and say, okay, here's my dashboard. Here's everything on my homepage, everything that's going on in my life right now. And then within each subpage, you can kind of have specific notes on that project. And it ranges, for me, everything in terms of calendar, my current reading list. I write book reports on books that I read. So I have my book reports on the books that I read. I rebuilt a motorcycle recently. So the motorcycle process, that I have a little Notion page for that, right? And so if I go to the DMV and I need to pull up the VIN number for the motorcycle, I've probably been to the DMV 6 times in the last 6 months. Well, every time they say, what's the VIN? I say, I have no idea. Oh, what's it on my Notion? Okay, here it is. And then I can give them the VIN. So that's just a really small example. And of course, everyone has their note-taking system. This is just the system that I've employed, and it's been quite effective for managing the multiple different projects.
Very nice. So do you also use in parallel a real book to, if you're not in front of your computer, or if you're rock climbing, for example, and you get an idea and you need to write it down, and then you come back and add it to your Notion, or what how do you do that?
Yeah, so my systems right now, and again, they're a little bit disparate, I have to admit, but I am currently not using a physical book. There were periods of time where I was using a physical book, but that doesn't seem to be the most effective right now because I have my phone with me almost at all times, unfortunately. Although I've gotten a lot better at just turning off my phone and not answering calls. But that's my baseline. I typically only use Notion for notes when I'm on my desktop, though. Very seldom do I actually use Notion to actually type on my phone. I don't like doing that very much. But it's really funny. I mean, I have the Notes application on the Apple iPhone. For some reason, on one of my projects, probably the one that I'm spending most of my time on, this construction projects, I'm using Notes on my iPhone, which is not linked to Notion, to track all of the material lists, etc., just when I'm on the job. right? Because that's offline. I can just always access the notes on my phone. So that's one resource that I have. Then the Notion is usually more on the desktop level, and I usually only access Notion in the morning and in the evening. I am fortunate to have a pretty good memory of anything that happens during the day. I'll remember. If I
That's
let it,
awesome.
if I let it wait until the next day, I may
Yeah.
not. And so if I have something happen to me in the morning, it doesn't matter if I put it into Notion immediately or wait till the end of the day. I'll still have that and be able to download it into a place where then I kind of have that second brain. And then another supplemental piece of this, which is not integrated into my Notion, but is of just absolutely core critical for me, is a Google Calendar, right? I mean, I have Google Calendar, and almost anything that I do is going to be scheduled on my Google Calendar always. And that gives me the reminder of upcoming events, 30-minute window of a reminder. And then something super small. I have a whiteboard in my living space. I have people think you need to get
see on your
Yeah.
right side.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Nice.
There it is. And so that has other stuff, right? That doesn't need to jump into the Notion necessarily, but just like ongoing checklists of like things that I want to have really visual and reminders of like, oh, like right now I have it like I need to make hummus. like I have chickpeas and I have the stuff to make hummus, and so I need to make hummus. So that's there, and that doesn't need to live on my Notion.
Yes.
But it needs to be a reminder for me to just pull the trigger and do it.
Yeah. I was going to ask about how trivial, I mean, how would you decide whether you want to put something on Notion versus would not put something on Notion? Because sometimes just getting the thing done is faster than actually adding it in Notion and then checking it off afterwards. So yeah, do you do that just to give a mental note that, okay, this is done, or do you just do that mentally?
No, I mean, I definitely, I have gotten to the point where I will sometimes even retroactively add things that I've already done.
Yes.
As a kind of, and the truth is, it is less of the actual benefit to me of doing it is more psychological than it is actually beneficial. I have to admit to that, because it's just saying like, I want to feel productive. So I want to see a checklist that has been checked off. And so sometimes I will add a checklist in Notion of something that I did earlier in the day that I'm done with, just to like visually prompt myself to say, hey, you did that thing, now it's done. Do I actually ever go back and look at it and say like, look, all that I've accomplished? Frankly, very seldomly. But I sometimes still do it. And I think that that's just kind of, and I'm not a psychologist, I don't know the details of it, but I know that for me personally, I love having checklists.
Yes. No, I feel the same thing, because I used to not do that. And now sometimes I do something and then I write it down and then I cross it off. And then I feel so much better that, okay, I got this thing done. And one of the books I was listening to, have you heard of Cal Newport, Deep Work?
That's a classic.
Yeah. So in that, he talks about completion of tasks, and it's very important to put a completion so your brain is not going on about thinking about whatever you've already completed. And there is a researcher called Roy Baumeister. He wrote about this thing called Zeigarnik effect, which is open-ended thoughts in our minds, and we carry on. It's a evolutionary thing we have had in our minds to remember. So our minds keep telling us, oh, do it, get this done, but then we keep postponing sometimes, and that becomes an open-ended loop in our minds. So completion helps to close that loop up, and we are done with that. It's just like purging that into our memory, and then it just get erased later on. Otherwise it's just going to be taking up our random, like RAM in our like computer memory. It just takes up that front, which is not required. So I love that. That's awesome. So yeah, Notion. Get back to Notion. I would love to.
maybe do you want me to screen share and we do a little walkthrough?
I would love to. And for our listeners, this can be watched on YouTube. If this particular Notion, if you're interested. So, yeah, let's get into the Notion screen
Yeah,
share
if you
and
can just enable sharing for me, then I will
sharing. Multiple participants can share. Okay, you should be able to do
all
it now.
right. All right. Can you see?
Yes,
All right.
morning tea rituals. I love
Yeah.
that.
So like when I first got started with Notion, and this is the funny thing, I did spend the early phase of like, watching a few tutorial videos, and then it started working for me at in some ways, and then I
Mhm.
stopped trying to learn more about it, I have to admit. And so hopefully maybe I think about new things that I could learn, but I'm not doing it right now. But like for today, my daily rituals, I've already done this, I've already done this, I've already done this.
What's WOD?
So that's a workout WOD. It's kind of a CrossFit term, but so I've
Oh,
already
okay.
done my meditation, my morning stretch, and my workout today, which means on my daily rituals, I still have to journal, read, study language, and write. Although that makes me seem way more productive than I actually am, because the language and the journal piece, yeah, they're not going so well these days.
Do you put journal on Notion as well, or you
Yeah.
have a book for that?
So in here, for a while I was in a book, but again, I was working on typing for a while to improve my typing speed. And
Yeah.
so I really wanted to focus on that. And so here's like a bunch of journal entries, right? And so I just had, and then I tagged them. I was like, here I had an important journal entry about finance that I had some idea
Mhm.
about, or here I thought this one was an important one. So this is just an example of here's my journal, and then I have tagged what date it was, and then I thought that this journal entry was important. I just put a tag on it that said this was important for financial reasons. This one was specific to a project, etc. And so, yeah, that's all kind of my journal. And the way it kind of works is it's all a bunch of pages, right? And so just like any kind of stacked, right? You can see on the left, I kind of have the more like traditional, like finder view type of scenario. So right, home is a single page, and then everything else that's a page is within the home page. So if I use this drop down, you can see here are all of these sub pages of home, and then here's Grand Canyon. Here are sub pages of Grand Canyon, etc. But I never use this view because I really like this visual format of Notion here, where it's like, okay, I have tasks, I have life, I have work, right? And so here's I have Bird and Sons, AZIPL, Beth, Windsor, Gerald, Mark, Bird and I have Bird and Sons twice. So clearly I need to improve my system a little bit. I must have had a thought and then added a new page. Um, and then I have some projects that are just more personal projects that I'm working on down here. And I like taking trips. And so I have quite a few trips that are either in my archive or are upcoming. And then this is like, oh, here's a reading list. This is just my homepage that we're moving through. And then this is a calendar view, which I have in place. I have to admit, I really don't use this calendar. It's just there at a super high level, at the macro scale, right? I know that like today I'm going to visit Eva. This weekend I've got my friend's birthday party. On the 18th, I'm visiting my grandma in Tucson. The 20th is Father's Day, but this is not linked to my Google Calendar, although there might be a way to do that. And it's totally possible that API integration is available, but I don't know, and I'm not currently doing it.
Mm. So nice, so beautiful. It's very nicely organized, because it's all in my mind. Like you keep calling this your second brain, and I
Mhm.
totally see that, because otherwise it's not as neatly organized in my brain. I may have like so many things, but they're all like jumbled up and everywhere and very chaotically
Yeah.
stored. So
Well, like an example here is like I have on most areas, I have like the ongoing list, which is visible to me, and then I have an archive right here. I have work archive, I have tasks archive, I have
Mhm.
trips archive. And so here are upcoming trips. I've got a June 12th trip, which is tomorrow. I have an October 21, a November 21, a March 22, a Kenya 22. But I have a trips archive, which if I click on the trips archive, it will take me to that page. And I can see some things that I've done since I started using Notion. So I did Kenya in December 2020. I did Indian Creek. I did this Hermit Trail. I did this Four Peaks trip. I went to visit my sister, right? And then each one of these had their own page, right? So Indian Creek might have nothing in it. Oh yeah, it has some super basic, like, okay, what do I need to buy? Vegetables, milk, apples, and berries. Here's a YouTube video of some stuff that's relevant to this trip. Here's some food. Here are some people that I'm going to go climb with, and I'm going to split gas. Like, it's just a glorified note-taking system, but in a really systematic, structured way, to where instead of having this in some book that I don't remember where it is or some other system, it's right here. And now it lives in my archive. And will I ever use it again? Probably not, but at least it's there. So I refer back to it. But now I have an upcoming trip. So Powell Plateau here. I have very little stuff because I haven't got into planning this yet. But I could add more.
Does it? I see that it helps, kind of forces you to think in a particular way. You know what I mean? Like you have to, because it has to go in this framework.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm thinking about my trip, I start thinking about, let's say I have a Grand Canyon trip next week. I do have a Palm Spring trip next week. So let's say I have a Palm Spring trip next week, and then I'll think about it when I'm, like, for example, I'm cooking, and then I'll forget about it. I'll have something in my mind. Oh, I have to start packing now. And then it's all in my mind, and then I'll cook, and then I'll do it whenever. But here I can see that you're totally organizing your thinking as well. You're putting yourself, okay, I have to pack, I have to figure out what clothes I need to take, and then what are the places I'm going to go, what are the timings I'm going to leave home, come back. You're like really going into details, which otherwise you would not. Like I'm only thinking high level in my mind. So do you see that? Does it make you think in a specific way?
Yeah, I mean, putting in the structure, and then sometimes things don't fit in the structure. And I will admit, I definitely oftentimes rely on just my memory to allow me to do things. But for instance, like, the trips, if I need to plan stuff for them, and it doesn't always synergize, right? Sometimes I might put a task in my task box, which is relevant to one of my trips, that doesn't ever end up in the trips box. But that's okay, as long as the item gets done. This is just more of like a high level, okay, let me see what's going on right now. These are the projects that I'm working on right now. And then, like, what's a good example? Like, here's this Triumph project. Now, it's kind of just a glorified note-taking system. There's nothing super special in here, but here is the make and the model, the VIN number, etc. Some notes and some questions that I had about the bike, some items that I realized I must have. So I had a conversation. What are the motorcycle equipment they need to have? Well, I actually got, I think, most of these things. They're still in the checked box. I can check off helmet. I have a helmet, right? But I got it. And so then I just kind of forgot about this. And this project is done. I got the license plate. It's in my name now. And so, like, I don't really go and visit it. It just sits there. But I do really like the capacity to have something to refer back to if I need it. And then some of the more cool parts of Notion are the fact that you can actually, you can do a bunch of integrations, right? And so if you were to make a new page, like if I were to make a new project, right? And I have it set up to where at any point in Notion, so I have it set up automatically where if I select this button right here, this is a constant button, it'll add a new page underneath my projects. However, anywhere you type within Notion, if you just put a backslash, these are all of the blocks that you could add. So I just put a backslash. I could add a text box here. I could embed a page. I could do a to-do list. I could do, and you can search here. So list, here's all the different types of list. What if I wanted to put a code block? Code. I could embed code right here within. It actually has a code editor within Notion. If I wanted to put a PDF,
Wow.
I can sync a PDF, or I could do an image. I can upload an image, and this will automatically, if I select this, all right, cool. Let's choose an image from my desktop. I mean, I know this is super, what is a cool image? Grand Canyon, oh, Instagram, Cody Ice Dane. That's a cool image. It will take a second, it will load. Oh, and that's funny, it's upside down. I think my image must have been upside down. Well, that's me climbing some snow and ice somewhere in Wyoming. Oh, it flipped right side up. There I am. And then I can just, add an image, embed it directly in the site. And then you could just click here on that more information. You can add notes to it. You can view it full screen. In this case, I'm going to delete it because I don't want it there. But then I can add a new page right here. And here I've added a new page. I can title the page, and this is, podcast fun. I can add a template. They have pre-made templates in Notion. And again, this is something I don't do that much, but what if I wanted a task list? And so this is where you can start getting more structured, fancy stuff. Someone went and spent all the time, Notion spent all the time in putting this fancy checklist here. But what if I wanted education and I wanted a grade calculator? They have a grade calculator, and then they even say how it works. And then you just say, okay, cool. I will put that in. They want a thesis planning. They have a thesis planning template, and you just add so many templates are available, and I am not using some of the more advanced functionality that Notion has to offer. I'm using it more as a glorified note-taking system and checklist with a bunch of subpages that allow me to organize my thoughts in a structured way. Whereas I think people that then take the next step of using it in a really effective manner, maybe on collaborators, they might use something like this, like use this template, right? And so now they're able to, drag. I haven't started standardized typography. Oh, nope, it's next up. Now it's in progress. And then this page itself, the task list, you could, I want to see merge with PDF, share. There it is. I could share this with you right now, Soumya, and then we could collaborate on this page, just like you would a Google Drive document. And multiple people could edit and visualize the same block within your Notion setup. And so that seems like that could be quite useful on a collaboration. And to be honest, to force both of our hands, you know what I'm going to do right now? And this is where I'm going to have to be sad. Like my AZIPL thing is crazy right now. Like I have a bunch of notes. So I was just rapid fire taking notes from our last call. Here's a bunch of sub pages, right? Hours, website, Doug, Tech Huddle, Salsa, 2021, Salsa notes, da-da-da-da-da. But what I'm reminding myself is I'm just going to da-da-da-da-da. I even put in the logo, just to make things look.
I love that.
Look good. But I'm going to put in a new page. What am I trying to do here? One for us, a Forrest and Soumya collaboration page. And then I can just, that's very interesting.
SOUP.
SOUP.
CKM@gmail.com. So do I have to pay to use Notion, or is it free?
So everything that I have shown you on Notion so far is free. At some
Awesome.
point, there is a data upload constraint.
Okay.
So at some point, you could make, if you're uploading images or videos or PDFs into your Notion, which you can do, like for example, like here, I can bring in an image, or I could even put like, here I can add a cover image. So then, oh, cool, there's our cover image. Our cover image. What if I wanted to change our cover image to an upload? I can go, you know, do the same thing. I'll do this awesome. It doesn't have to be me. It'll just be this beautiful view of the snow. And
Very
so
nice.
I think
Yeah.
if you were to upload a bunch of your own data to Notion, it's just like any iCloud storage. They give you X amount for free. If you go above that X amount, and I'm going to drag this. So I don't know, maybe that's probably better if I drag it like that. X amount is for free. I think in the free version, you have unlimited pages. And so what I mean by that is if we kind of go back to here, right, I have this home. And then with under home, I have all of these different pages, and there's a bunch of them. And then with each one of those, there's a bunch of pages, right? I think I have unlimited pages in free Notion, and it's only the data that is constrained.
Oh, okay. So you are using a free version.
Yes.
Wow, this is amazing. You have so much you can store in the free version. And yeah, because I think Google Drive can do the same thing, but the UI is not as friendly as Notion. Google Drive, like I have to go to Sheets or I have to go to Word. I mean
Yeah.
Google, yeah, it's separate. They're all like its own entities. So
Well, so one of the, let me see if I can sell. One of the things, so this is one thing I didn't mention from earlier, Soumya, that's really important. Like for some of the larger projects that I do, where I'm tracking to track a lot of financial stuff, expenses, hours, etc. I still am a sucker for Excel or Google Drive. I think of the two as totally interchangeably. Excel and I'm not Google Drive, but Google Sheets. And so for some of my projects, I use Google Sheets. And so for a while, I was tracking some hours and some expenses in a table format. So I can insert a table into like an inline table here. So I've just inserted a table, right? And I'm going to say, this is forest, this is hours, this, I don't know, like, you know, I worked 5 hours today, and then I did nothing. I worked 6 hours. These are the tags. So actually the format for this is not really working because this is set as a multi-select right now. But if I change it to number, right? So now it's going to recognize 5 and 6, but it doesn't have like equals X plus that. The page and the table is not inherently a Google Sheet. And so I have not really liked working in Notion unless I embed, right? So I could just embed.
oh, you have Google Drive on there.
Yeah, so I could embed
You can just give the link of Google Drive,
a Google Doc, exactly. And so,
Wow.
but the problem with doing that is I don't think I can edit it directly in Notion. And forgive me to make this like, this is like, I guess a little bit less. So I'm just going to make a new Google Sheet here. I think I'm still sharing Notion, not my Google Sheet that I'm making. Is that right, Soumya?
You're in Notion. I see your
Okay.
Notion.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just rapid fire making a Excel or a Google Sheet. I've just copied the link. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and put that embed link in my Notion, which is going to link to a Google Sheet. But I just wanted to confirm this. It's taking some time. I'm pretty sure you can visualize it, but you can't edit it.
Right. Okay. So it is asking you to sign in there, or is it you've already integrated your Google account, because you log in with your Google account to Notion, right?
Yeah, and I don't know why sometimes it makes me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think I get the idea that sometimes you may not want to put it in Notion. Sometimes you want to keep it separate.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm having to remember my my
Now
Google
I can
password.
see your Google page.
Yeah. No, because this is within Notion actually, because it's linked. So I'm still in Notion right now, but somehow it maybe because I'm trying to change something, it's making me re-sign in. I'm kind of curious. Okay, well, this is one way to do it because I didn't feel like typing my password, I guess.
Sorry.
No problem. Oh, oops. What the heck? Well, for some reason, this is acting a little strange right now.
Yeah.
But let's see if I can get back in.
So have you used it as embedded system in your?
Yeah, I've embedded a couple things, but I haven't tried to edit those embedded thing. And so that was what I was kind of curious if I could do. Oh my gosh, Soumya. Oh my gosh. I'm not sharing right now, but this is such glory. I'm totally editing. That's incredible. Sorry, I got to go back to editing or screen sharing mode because I'm just having this revelation. For some reason, I didn't think this would be possible, and it totally is possible.
Oh,
So
wow.
I did not know that you could do this, but it makes sense from an embed, and this is going to revolutionize my life.
That's cool.
Like literally, now I can just do 5, 6, 7, 8, and then, equals sum of the above. And this is all, I'm in Notion and I'm editing. That's fantastic. Oh, I'm getting a call. Let me just, potential spam. So this is really cool. And this is actually going to be super valuable for me because then it means I don't have to navigate away from Notion and I can just hyperlink or embed the, like a Google Sheet like this. And then I have the functionality of a table. Oh, this is so cool.
It's very nice. And then you also have the sheets. You can even navigate a different sheet within the Google. Like you can switch to sheets as well. And can you go to file and see, can you open like a different folder, or is it just this sheet, right? It's embedded.
Oh, interesting. I think that in this case, it's just
that sheet, huh?
That sheet. Well, because I don't know what I just did. I like accidentally pressed on something. Here.
Do Control Z. Will it?
Yeah. I was just going to see if it's trying to load right now. Yeah, so there it is.
Yeah.
And then if I go, let's try it again. Yeah, no, I don't think I can. I think it restricts you. It restricts you to only edit the current sheet that you're in. But this is fantastic. This is so cool. Well, yeah, I'll play around with this a little bit and be able to add some stuff because, like I said, I had felt constrained in the past, and maybe I just didn't look hard enough on the embed, and maybe the setting of the Google Sheets that I was trying to embed were maybe in view only mode or something like that. But for me, from an integration standpoint, this is the best of both worlds, because from a, as you mentioned, a UI UX perspective, I find Notion to be exceptionally well organized and streamlined and just really easy to work with. And then if you then don't have to navigate away from Notion and you can automatically be editing, I mean, because you can't, nothing competes with Excel and Google Sheets. Like nothing is on par with the incredible functionality of this system. And so the ability to have it directly accessible within Notion, that's just fantastic.
Very cool. So any other features in Notion? If I'm a beginner,
Yeah.
I've just created a Notion account and maybe added a few pages.
Yeah.
So I loved how you said that we can add like a dashboard and then go into each page to look at the details, right? Is that a good starting point, or is that because I even have to think differently? I feel the way I'm thinking now, I mean, I have to work with it and experiment what's the best way for me. Should I create the pages first and then go back and add it as a dashboard, or from the dashboard go into the pages?
Well, what I would do is I would do this idea, and this is something that I am stealing from someone else for sure. I watched a video and that was how it got me to start this. I would recommend by creating this idea of the cascading homepage, right? So start with the homepage, make it your homepage. It's your welcome page, it's your dashboard. Every time you come, you are welcomed, right? It even says welcome forest. How nice is that? And then from there, you can start organizing this however you want. Maybe you don't have a daily rituals situation. That's fine. You don't need that. Maybe you don't have it structured with task, life, work. Maybe it's some other structure. But what I would do is I would have a dashboard homepage that is your jumping off point for everything else that you're doing. And for me, and it's going to be probably fairly similar for most people to have it, you know, you have your tasks, you have your personal, you have your work, you have some other projects, maybe you have some trips, you have some reading lists. And for some people, reading lists might not be on the homepage. It might be a sub page, right? Where a reading list instead of a heading is a page, and then you navigate away from the homepage to get to that. And so I would recommend starting with the homepage and then start organizing, because the thing with the tasks, for example, is these blocks, like I have them set in vertical orientation, but like let's say I wanted projects to come. You see, now I've shrunk it. You see how it automatically just shrunk, but that doesn't really make that much sense to me to do it like that, where I've put projects here and then it's too constrained in the vertical column. So I don't really want that. So I'm going to bring projects back to its heading where it should be, right there. And then
It was interesting. It didn't move all the parts of project. It just moved the.
Well, yeah, because everything under projects, they're just sub pages. So this is just a heading. Like if I look here, currently it's a, so I think it's bullet. An H, it's like an H, it's just like an H3 heading, right? So like if I wanted to create a new heading, I just go here and I'm going to go H3. That's a heading, right? And I go enter. Then I say forest. So there, that's a heading. And then all I did is I just started typing a bunch of pages, right? So I could just say, I want a page. There's a page. But automatic creates a page. That's a test page. And then I'm going to go back to home. And now you see I have a new heading, forest, some junk, and then a test page right there. And I could go in and put a board on this page. Card 1, not started. Card 2, in progress. Again, it's just like, it's hard for me to say. It's like where to get started. You know, there's so much that you can do. And there's so much that I'm not doing, to be honest. But for what it is for me right now, it's working. And this learning that I can edit Google Sheets with an embed directly within Notion, that's my beautiful takeaway from this call, among other things. But from Notion in particular, that's just going to be really, really useful.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing all this, Forrest. Very helpful.
for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put more work in, because it's fun to see the history. It gives you like motivated. Oh wow, I've done all this, and
Mm-hmm.
then I can keep doing. It's a good, because I never go back to my physical journal. I've just stacked up books, but then I don't really go and then read them. This one is a nice, you've like pages and pages, and then you can actually see the
Yeah.
build up. It's like a compound interest. So
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things, and again, it's so small, but to kind of something we taught about earlier, is these little what they call to-do lists that have
yeah,
the checkbox, and then you can check it, and automatically it strikes through, but it strikes through really subtly so that you can
yeah,
still see exactly what it was. It's
yes,
beautiful. The amount
yeah,
of intent and effort that went into this, because they know what people love. People want to see what they've done. And so like these to-do lists, the ability to toggle them like this and then untoggle them, oh, that's like
amazing. Yeah,
instant gratification.
yeah. And do they uncheck every day, or
Yep.
how is this?
Oh,
How does this work?
no. I mean, so for me, this is I'm not really this was something I set up a long time ago. I just haven't ever changed it. For a while, I was actually physically checking these every day, and then I would uncheck them at the end of the day, and then I would recheck them the next day.
Mm,
I'm not doing that right now. There may be some crazy way where you could set up to like automatically uncheck every day. I feel like that is way beyond what um, like I could change the
yeah.
color of them, I could comment on them, but to actually have some dynamic script that would uncheck them, every day, I don't think that that's possible.
Or it could be paid version. There could be already a template for.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. I don't actually understand, or haven't explored I haven't ever hit a constraint in the free version that has prompted me to explore what the paid version is. Let's put it
Mm,
that way.
okay.
And so if
Okay.
I ever hit that constraint, then I'll probably buy the paid version because it will be worth it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. I think I've taken your hour for discussing this. You're, I mean, very inspirational. Whenever I talk to you, I always go back feeling very good about, feeling inspired. So you definitely leave your surrounding feeling inspired, and uh, with your practice and your productive mindset. So how to just to end this thing, do you go back to like every day? Do you have a checklist that you go to, or to make sure that you're not off track? how do
Mm.
you how do you check yourself on that?
I mean, I definitely, the easiest way for me to be on track in terms of like my day to day is I will have my Google Calendar. I'll put in place the things that I want to get done that day, usually at least with a week in advance. But the
Mm-hmm.
putting in a more structured timeline
Yeah.
to some of the projects that I do, that's a definite area of growth for me. That's actually
Mhm.
something that I'm not as effective at. And part of it for me, and just based on the projects that I'm working on, is it's this way that I've navigated my life right now where certain things have deadlines, but other things, I am very fortunate on a lot of the projects that I work on that they don't have really hard set in stone deadlines. So as long as I'm doing the work and I'm feeling productive and I'm producing, which is just kind of like I if I'm not producing, then what the heck am I doing? And I wouldn't be working for someone if I wasn't producing, then the timeline is kind of less important. And it will get done when it gets done. And for me, on some of my projects, that's slower than I maybe could be working because prioritization. Am I going to go climbing this weekend? Well, heck yes, I'm going to go climbing this weekend because that's what
Yeah.
brings me joy. So why would I postpone the thing that brings me joy just to work a little bit more? No. And so And so that balance between work and play is a challenge, and I don't
Yeah.
always get it right.
Yeah.
And what oftentimes happens to me, and I've noticed this, is I go through ups and downs. And I guess maybe this is kind of a good thing even to conclude on in a way. I go through emotional ups and downs and motivational ups and downs. It's a reality, and I've learned this about myself. It's, sometimes when I go on a long trip for climbing or backpacking or whatever it is, by the end of that trip, I've been rejuvenated in a way and excited by what I've done, which then folds directly into like, oh boy, now I really have to get after it when I get back. And so whether or not I'm actually doing this or not, and I don't know, I'm not really trying to compare myself to anyone. I don't really care about that comparison that much, to be frank. But if right now, I take at least a week off every month, minimum. So I'm looking at like at least 3 months off of me doing personal me time stuff a year. And what I hypothesize is by doing that, I then am more productive on the times that I am, working, quote
Yeah.
unquote, because by the time I've concluded that week of adventure, I feel this really strong desire to like double down on work that
Yeah.
next week. And
Hmm.
so that kind of helps hold me accountable. But on the day-to-day, in terms of scheduling, etc., I have a certain checklist of things that have to get done. And if I don't feel very productive, it weighs on me heavily. And
Yeah.
I will seek to rectify that in the
Yeah.
coming days.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. And last thing, when you wake up, what's your first thought?
Mm.
Being so productive. So, yeah.
Well, so I guess the first thought, and this is actually a critical, and maybe this is also a useful little piece here, and it took me a very long time to establish this,
Yeah.
but the first thing I do every morning, without fail, I haven't missed this for about a year now, is I meditate and I do my shoulder exercises. So before I leave my bed, I, fold myself up, I sit cross-legged, and I just go into a space of, and meditation is different for a lot of people. And I'm probably, sometimes my meditation is 1 minute,
Yeah.
but it is an intentional 1 minute. And it's a structured, regular practice. Whereas if you actually are in a deep state of calm, of settling within that 1 minute, it can be hugely beneficial. And so, yeah, I guess I oscillate between days where that meditation is a time in which I am calming my brain,
Yeah.
because I'm in a little bit of a hectic state right now and trying to prepare for this trip and get a lot of things done. Lately, my meditation has been less of a meditation and more of a mental planning for the day. And so I'm
Yeah.
sitting there, eyes closed, cross-legged, and I'm supposed to be meditating and calming my brain. Instead, I'm kind of making a checklist in my head. And so
Uh-huh.
that has been what it's been quite a bit. Um, but because of these kind of focuses of mine in terms of getting some of these projects done, and then the physical side of things, which I'm really invested in with climbing, and I have had injuries to my shoulder in the past. I just have made a commitment to say I have to do these exercises every single day, and so that's done every single day without fail. With it's just I just make it like there's not a choice. That
Yeah.
you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And so even if it's just super quick, it gets done.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your piece of like life joy with the podcast listeners, with me and here on the podcast. So really appreciate you taking time, because I learned so much in the conversation, and I hope to use more Notion as well. I love the UI. I love the interface
Yeah.
for the short period I've tried so far.
Well, fantastic. Well, I'll be excited to yeah, and thanks for having me on and letting me share a little bit. And yeah, I wish, I don't know, I hopefully it was useful kind of for that entry point to Notion, because I would classify myself very much not as an expert, but just as kind of an early um kind of primitive user, but I made that collaboration sheet so we can
Yeah.
get more advanced on some future collaboration, I think, together.
Yes, definitely. And it's good for the beginner. It's perfect for the beginner style. And it's the second brain, your second brain, as you call
Mm.
it. So, so I love that. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for,
awesome. Thanks for taking the time, Sumi. We'll chat soon, I'm sure, on some
yes.
projects pending.
And have a nice trip, weekend, and all the always trips, all the
Thank
trips
you.
that you do.
Thank you. Always, always.